Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Joe. How are you in this brand new year?
Doing pretty good. New Year's was fun. Have a very interesting legislative session coming up. As far as Albany, we had the governor's state of the state message. We know what the priorities are, and a lot of things will be happening in healthcare, older adults, disabilities, those things that we've been talking about.
A lot of things we've touched on, a lot of things we're going to touch on in the future, of course. But a couple of things happen in the new year, as usual. New laws come into effect. A lot of rules are changed all over the place. So today we're going to talk about one thing that we have not discussed ever before, and it's something that just came into law. But you're going to tell us when it happened and why it happened and all these things. But
Well, let
today
me
we're going to
be
talk
frank.
about.
Let me be frank. I'm lucky you actually told me that we're going to be talking about transparency today because I had been involved in the legislative efforts and part of them in getting them passed. There were lots of people, but I was National Employment Lawyers Association New York chapter. I'm on the legislative committee, and we worked very hard at getting that transparency law passed. But I had lost track of it, and the regulations had come out after the passage last September, and I had to look them up and see. And nice to see. Nice to see we got that success. So I'm
Well,
lucky
I'm
that you
glad
said,
I'm
"Hey,
keeping you
Joe,
on
it's
your toes.
the."
I'm glad I'm keeping you on your toes because I know you do a lot of legislative work. I know you're always pushing for things, and I know that, like business gets in the way. Of course, you have clients that you have to take care of and everything else, but I know you're always pushing for things. So this is one that actually came through. So tell me, what is the pay transparency law?
Basically, that if an employer is going to post a job, doesn't matter where they post it, social media, newspaper, whatever, that it has to set out the salary range, the minimum of the maximum, and that's a good faith uh, amount. And whether that's characterized as salary, hourly, um, it just has to set forth the minimum and the maximum, whatever that basis for pay might be. Has to say if it's commissioned, or if it's paying commissions, doesn't have to set out the terms of commissions, just that it's commissioned. These are minimum standards. Employers, of course, can have, more information. So take a job that you may have tips, and the hourly is $18 an hour. They can say $18 an hour. They don't have to say plus tips. They could say plus tips. They can add more information, but there's a minimum amount of information they have to provide. These are for jobs that are being performed in New York or remote workforce folks who report into New York, but there has to be a substantial connection to New York. And that's a central theme in employment law, um, relating to whether discrimination laws, fair wages, things of that nature. What are the connections to New York? Are they just incidental or sporadic? That's not covered. There has to be a demonstration of the connection. So certainly decision making or reporting with things um, that are done in New York or occur by virtue of Zoom or whatever in New York, that would be covered. So physically performed in New York or those substantial connections to New York in order to have that coverage. And as I say, that symmetry, very similar to other types of employment law protections.
So let me ask you, what was the purpose behind it? Like, how is it going to help people like you and I if we're looking for work?
Substantially. So, I'm practicing law 36 years. We go back to the 90s, you know, and even up to the recent past where people were told, if you tell anybody your salary, I'm going to fire you. And then you have people performing the same jobs at different rates, and these disparities, oftentimes, or I shouldn't say often, many times discriminatory. And the basis of that and how that arose was because we have employment at will, and everybody can accept or reject the terms of employment. That if this person will work for that amount of money and that person will work for this amount of money, they're both getting what they wanted. So that was part of the employment of will aspects. But you see the economic leverage, the economic disadvantage, the fact that, you know, many times there are discriminatory bases to it. And it takes some of the guesswork out of whether you want to take a job or get a job or look for a job. Um, it provides information that labor, us who work, should have if we're looking at a job rather than just the hook of, oh, this job is great. Now, job postings do not have to encompass health benefits, retirement plans, or any of those other uh, types of welfare benefits, as we call them. Just really the basic minimums, maximums.
So this is something more, again, I guess the name is transparency. So there is transparency in work. So now that means that if I'm working somewhere, I can now discuss my salaries. I mean, I guess it was always really discussed, but it wasn't really discussed. But now it can openly be discussed, and now someone can, like, is this gonna help in gender roles? Like, women make a lot less money than men do. I don't know if that's getting closer
There are
together or not.
so there are so many discriminatory drivers for pay rates, right? People looking for work. You look at the social equity aspects, right? Need the job, will take the job. The old bootstraps, well, start at the bottom, work your way up. No, it's oppressive and it's inequitable. So yes, the glass ceiling type situations where men and women were looking to get rid of that, but it's much broader than that as well.
Oh, and that's awesome. Now, this is only in New York, or is this everywhere else, all other states?
No, it's just New York.
Oh, okay, no
Just New York.
California.
As
Usually
far as
California front doors, and then
I mean, California could, I don't know what other states have addressed it. I could tell you the fight we had with it, as far as how the legislation was developed, because we were fighting these basic economic principles of employment at will. New York is a conservative state, typically employer oriented. So when you look at, well, why should I have to pay if they're willing to work for less? Why do I have to pay them the same or more? And it's a good point in a sense, except for these inequities and methodologies that we've talked about. Now, one important point to mention is that it's not that an employer has to post every job, right? If I wanted to hire you as an associate and I said, Edison, come on and join the firm, I can do that. If I want to promote you, I can do that. But if I'm going to post a job, or if I'm going to post a promotion, if I'm going to say, okay, here's the broadcast, I want people to apply, then it has to include this basic information. And even when you look at other uh, types of advertisements, and the regulations speak specifically to advertisements, which are posting multiple different jobs or management jobs or things of that nature, it has to show the salary ranges. So it's not just hourly work, it's the salary work, and that's to address the point that you were making earlier as far as gender or social equity disparities.
now, do all size businesses have to do this? I mean, I think I
More
was
than four
reading
employees,
how
four
many?
employees or more.
Oh, wow. Okay. So four employees or more. So if you're a solopreneur, well, if you're by yourself, you don't have to worry about it. But if you have two, three, so four or more, then you have to do this when you're hiring individuals.
Yeah, and we're looking at, whenever we get down into employees, what's an employee? We characterize it as full-time equivalents, right? Two part-timers make a full-timer. So we're talking about four employees. It's really four full-time equivalents.
Mm, oh, that's good to know. I hadn't even thought of that because sometimes you have a couple of people who are part-time. You figure, oh, I could circumvent the system, and I don't have four full-time employees. So you're saying two part-times, or even three individuals could make a one full-time employee. Then is that correct?
Oh, sure, full-time equivalents.
Oh,
You know,
okay,
like a
awesome.
40-hour work week, however many people you hire to fulfill that. So,
All right.
because
So how?
look at gig workers, right? Where you have, those types of circumstances, and that's reporting into New York. So we're looking at the coverage. Now, the one problem with the regulation is, and this is, I wouldn't say common, but many times in New York State's labor laws, is they have these laws and they say, okay, well, this guy didn't do it, right? I want to make a complaint. So right now, you can make a complaint to the Department of Labor. You can't sue over it. We'll see about the regulations as far as, well, they didn't post it on being paid a disparity type of thing. That's still being developed. We have this new law with the enforcement. Right now, it's the Department of Labor who are doing it, who you can make the complaint to, and then they can uh, get the recompense for you. But whenever you have a new law and you're developing the regulations, it's always a work in progress. So,
So how are they going to enforce this? Are there going to be fines, or is it just slap in the wrist? Or I mean, I know it's very new; it hasn't happened yet. But is this a fine related thing?
no, right now it is just Department of Labor inspectors can come down and enforce it. They're working out those, right? We were happy to get the protections. All right. We always
It
fight
has to
for the
start somewhere.
enforcement. We wanted, obviously a private right of action. If you don't post it and I'm there and I'm underpaid, it's not discrimination other than, your misrepresentation. I should be able to get, that compensatory difference. So, you know,
The-
oftentimes I shouldn't say oftentimes, the same thing where someone's underpaid, they call the Department of Labor to get paid. Department of Labor can get involved and then, recover that money for them. We're expecting the same type of enforcement mechanism. Um, but I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it
Okay.
right now. If you go on the Department of Labor website, they have the complaint form and you can make the complaint to them, you know. But what will you get out of it? Um, as I say, we'll see how that develops because if if it's a type of, so a posting has to be made in good faith, right? If I give a minimum of maximum, I have to have a good faith belief that that's what they are. And if it's really some type of fraud or a misrepresentation, and that there's a disparity in what's being paid, um, that may be covered or will be covered under the other type of failure to pay wages laws, like minimum wage and things of that nature. I mean, that's as I'm sitting here right now, that's my expectation.
Okay. So now, what happens if something was promised on an ad, for instance, you promised me $100,000, but you go in and then they start giving you $80,000. That's a totally different rule that you're breaking there, or is that because now you have advertising rules, right? And you
Right.
have a couple of different laws that you can break when you do that. Does it go under the transparency law, or is it like false advertising?
Well, it's false advertising. It's certainly fraud. It's similar to situations where people are promised a job in New York, they end up getting here, and the job evaporates, and here they are, stuck. But they had no contract, no guarantees. Um, so somewhat similar to that, and you know, for many years they were you were just out of luck. what we ended up doing were bringing suits relative to fraud, fraudulent inducement, um, and those types of claims. But they always turned out to be difficult because what's the extent of the damages you're otherwise suffering? If I'm taking a job for $100,000 and I walk in and my first paycheck is like, hey, what do where's the money? Well, can I continue working when I know I'm not being paid what I should? Am I accepting it? Is it discriminatory? Is there some type of claim that can be brought relative to the reason that disparity is created? And the glass ceiling cases, we used to do in the late 90s and into the early 2000s, and still now. I mean, it was always, that same type of issue. And then you fight over, oh, well, they're different jobs. She's only working 6 hours a day because she's got the kids, and he's has all this opportunity. And you look at the discrimination, the negative effects, not only in the amount of money being paid, but the opportunities that should be able to be pursued. So those types of motivations as to why we have these disparities are the same relative to the postings, but a false posting, also indicates, a motivation to misrepresent and fraud, and that there's an ulterior motive that we have to, kind of get at. So we're going to see how it rolls out, but it's a good law to get passed. And the points you were making earlier, are entirely correct. It addresses these issues of social inequity.
Definitely. So what's one way as an employer, how can I prepare? I mean, it's a new thing, obviously, it has to be rolled out and everything, but as an employer, what do I have to look for? Just make sure that I advertise properly, or, how do I dot the I's and cross the T's?
Um, you give a compensation range. It's just included in the advertisement. Compensation, and it's in all, many advertisements now. Such and such, depending upon experience, right? It's very common, but the you know I call them square rooters, the people who are trying to take advantage of other people instead of providing a fair wage for work being performed. Um, we're trying to get at those folks.
Okay, so it's just simple. Just simply state what the job is, what it pays, our range of it, and you should be covered. You should have no issues. All right, excellent. So if someone has an issue with this later on, because it may not happen right now, it's too soon, but if someone has an issue in the future, how would they contact you?
By phone, 845-651-0999. The website, rannilaw.com, and my email, joeranni@rannilaw.com.
Excellent. All right. So first episode of the year down the hatch, and
Yeah. No, it's a
a
good
lot more
subject.
to
I'm
go.
glad you educated me today. I'm glad I looked it up because, as I say, I've been waiting on regulations. I've been working on the housing issues, lost track, and it was nice to catch up on it.
Well, I'm glad I was able to help, and I'm glad that you still get to advise us because you're in it, right? So I'm gonna say thank you very much for this again, Joe. And this is Edison, in case people forgot over the new year. And I'm
Yeah.
gonna see you at the next video, Joe.
Catch you later, Edison.